meditate in the mood of gratitude to all the teachers in our lives. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Yantah Pravesha Mama Vachamimam Prashuptam Sanjeevayatya Khila Shakti Dharasvadhamna Anyamscha Hasta Charana Shravana Tvagadim Pranannamo Bhagavate Purushaya Tubhyam. I may sound a little funny because I have something called the pollen allergies. Do you all have that in Europe? Esther? Angelina, do you know what pollen allergies are? Okay. So it's just part of something what the body has to go through. So last week, we started exploring the island of friendship. And those of you who are on it will remember how beautiful it is to have friends in our lives. And we discussed about friendships in the mode of goodness, which is friendships that are on the Uttama Adhikari, means who has the right to help and guide others in their lives. They're called the Uttama friendships. And then we talked about friendships on the level of Madhyama, where you are equals. So remember those Chintamani, those 3 tier of friendships: Uttama Adhikari, Madhyama Adhikari, and Kanishta Adhikari. There's 3 levels of friendships we covered last week. And how it is important to have a holistic experience and to explore this island of the heart, which is called Sakhyam. Sakhyam are friendships. So today we'll dive a little deeper into the friendship of Madhyama. How important it is to have friendships with peers. We discussed about friendships with people who are essential friendships, who guide us, who nurture us, who show us the path, share their wisdom, and share their knowledge, and all the pitfalls. You'll notice that most of us in our lives, we will have incredible elders in our lives that help us to guide through different aspects of our lives so we don't make those mistakes. And they are very instrumental in our growth. And you'll remember that most of us who have families were raised by grandparents, and the grandfathers and the grandmothers, they tell you beautiful stories of life. And those stories are simply lessons for the children to take home with them. Anyone has grandparents telling them stories? Yeah, it's beautiful because what they do is they give you wisdom nuggets through stories. Just like the Vedas and Puranas, the yoga text. These are called ancient wisdom texts because those are the realizations of the sages in their own spiritual practice. So here, we are now going to explore how vital it is to have friends on the Madhyama Adhikari, who are peers, and how to develop those friendships and how to make sure that we have the right kind of friends and how to find value in those friendships. So friendship in general, in this context, it is about growing together. Very important. Friendships should be growing and not just, people coming together. In our world today, you will notice that we have friendships, we have drinking friends, we have hiking friends, we have coffee friends, we have movie friends, we have various different categories of friendships in our lives. And they all come together for a very unique setting, for a unique exchange. And that exchange is generally not very deep. Like you go with hiking friends, you're more talking about the different rocky mountains, the paths. It's still not very deep, but then sometimes within that friendship, you will get an opportunity to talk about nature and its universal connection and relationship to each and every one of us. But very rare, you'll notice those friendships, drinking friends, coffee friends, and all of these friendships, not very often do they come together for the purpose of growing in their own personal character, in their personal spiritual growth. So that's not something that happens. And therefore, I'm going to give you a few steps on how to find those real, genuine peers and friendships in our lives. So the first, we have to always question everyone around us, the friendships that we have. We have to take a stock of the friendships that we have. How many of those in our lives are friends who are helping you grow in spiritual life? Not that they have to pull you up. We're not talking about the essential friends. We're not talking about the Uttamadhikaris, just peers. How many of those friends are helping to grow with you? And how many are actually growing with you? Because sometimes you may grow and they may not be growing. So in this friendship of Madhyama Adhikari, that means both parties are growing together. So the first step is to take a stock of the friendships that we have and how are we growing together in those friendships. And one of the common threads when you take the stock, you'll notice that in that friendship, there is no competition and there is no comparison. So there's equal friendships, right? There's no competition and there is no comparison. You're simply growing together because you genuinely are on the same spiritual journey together. And those are on the Madhyama Adhikari level. We described 3, so we're talking about the middle one, right? What happens when we compete and compare with one another? When we compete and compare in these relationships, then generally we are on the lower tier of friendships, on the Kanishta Adhikari level of friendships. Why? Because then when you're competing and comparing, you're trying to pull the other person down. And you're trying to pull the other person down, or you're trying to push the other person down so you can be better than them. And this is how you can gauge in your friendships. Are the friends around you trying to pull you down, drag you down? Are the friends around you trying to push you down so they can be better than you? So first step is to take stock of the friendships that we currently have in our lives. And through the measurement of not just coming together, but growing together. And making sure that there is no competition and there is no comparison. So this is step 1 in building friendships. Did that part make sense? Any thoughts, any questions before I go to the next level? Okay. Yes, Moses.
Like envy, like no competition and no comparison. That sounds like, I mean, is envy a synonym for that?
Yes, it is generally in the mode of ignorance. We discussed the three modes of material nature. When we are envious of another person, there is envy, jealousy. Then what happens is we have to push them down. We have to pull them down. We cannot tolerate that they may have something better than us. They may even look a little bit more peaceful than me. How is that possible? Let me create some chaos.
I guess follow-up question is that even considered like a friendship at all?
Yes, those are friendships in the mode of ignorance, or friendships in the Kanishta Adhikari platform. Okay? So the second step is, after you take the stock, the second step is we have to find somebody who is like-mindedness. If you try to build friendships with people who are not like-minded, you may be struggling really, really hard. So you have to find people who are like-minded. I give you an example. In this beautiful story in the Puranas, we see the beautiful relationship between two friends, Krishna and Sudama. And they both go to an ashram to be trained to be good human beings. And both of them are always complementing and supplementing one another. And those friendships are friendships that never dies. See, friendships they never have a natural death. These friendships only die when there is an ego involved. So when we say we are friends forever, there is such a thing. There's friendships that are forever. And friendships will never die. The only death of friendship is when ego gets involved. And you can see that for yourself in your relationships. So therefore, we see in the example of this beautiful pastime of Krishna and Sudama, they go to the same ashram. One becomes the emperor of the world, and other is a simple mendicant. And he's living the life of absolute renunciation. Complete material opposite. But the connection between the two was so deep. It was a lifelong friendships. Even though they did not see each other after they graduated, one went on to become the emperor of the world, and the other just lived in a simple village, dedicating his life to service and living a life of absolute renunciation. He was so renounced, it is explained in the Puranas, that he was so renounced that he begged Lakshmi Devi. Lakshmi Devi is the goddess of fortune. That, my dear goddess of fortune, please let me engage my heart and soul in the service of the divine. And please let me not come close to you so that I'm not enamored by material opulence. So in this way, he would pray to the divine. And while praying to the divine personified came and guarded his door and prevented Lakshmi Devi from coming in. So imagine Krishna was standing as a doorkeeper, husband of the goddess of fortune, came standing as a doorkeeper of his friend's house to make sure that she does not go into the house. And this is the level of renunciation he had. He just totally wanted to dedicate his heart and soul in the service of the divine. And when they finally met together in the palace in Dwarka, just by hearing the name of Sudama, Krishna went on to become the emperor. When he heard that there was a skinny, frail Brahmana and his name was Sudama, Krishna could not resist any more time, and he ran out of the palace to greet his friend. And these are called friendships that are never ending, and they're like-minded because they're all in the pursuit of this transcendental principle of bhakti, which is eternal spiritual love. That is the binding factor of eternal friendships. So third step in this friendship is that when we're looking for these friendships, that we must, before we get into these friendships, we must examine ourselves. First level was that we took stock of all our friendships, and now we are examining ourselves. Who are we? Based on who we are, then once we take an inventory of who we are, then we'll be able to find friendships that meet that criteria. Otherwise, you will have friendships that don't have much depth. Because the depth is inside of you. When you find your depth, then you will find friendships that are very, very deep and meaningful. If you don't know who you are, you'll find friends who are on the same boat, and both of you will sail in the direction that nobody knows where anyone is going. So it's very important to, when you want to get into a friendship, take an inventory of who you are. What is it that you're looking for? What is it that truly makes you happy in life? And you prepare for those friendships. So before you find a friend, find yourself. Or you find someone that will help you find yourself. And so look at relationships and friendships like an exam, like a test when you go to school. You're constantly thinking, how to write the exam. You have to study for the exam. And that study is the study of the self. When you study yourself, what is it that you're doing? What is your purpose? And through this self-analysis, the study of the self, you will find such depthness in you, and then you'll be surrounded with people who are also diving deep. They're called the deep divers, not shallow friends, the deep diving friends. And this happens when we dig very deep into our heart to find our true eternal spiritual selves. And you'll notice in pursuit of this, many, many friends that will come in your way, who are friends who are looking for opportunities to use one another. In this material world, one of the most common cause for friendships is, how can I use this person so that I can move forward? And when that happens, when we are looking for friendships, and the modus operandi is based on, how can I use this person? Then what happens? There's dissatisfaction, and there's continuation of trying to get back at each other. There is a very beautiful story in the Mahabharata. Mahabharata is this great epic. And within the Mahabharata, you'll see there is a portion where they talk about the Gita for 45 minutes, the dialogue. So in that story, you'll find these two friends. One is Virata. Virata is one of the kings. And Dronacharya. Dronacharya, who was a Brahmana, he was an intellectual class, but he comes from very poor families. And his friend Virata was a king, was a prince. So they were going to school together, and they became very close friends. And so close that each one of them promised to one another that no matter what happens, we'll always be friends forever. Don't we all make such promises when we're kids? What is it called? BFF? What is it called? Is there such a thing? You know, you're my BFF. So they had something like that. So Virata and Dronacharya, they were BFF. And they promised to each other that whenever you need anything, please come and see me. And they both graduated the ashram. Virata went on to become the king. And Dronacharya, he had remained a poor Brahmana. So one day Dronacharya went, he needed his friend. He thought to get some help. So he went to this kingdom and he asked his friend, "Oh, King Virat, do you remember me? My name is Dronacharya. We were friends together. I have a little son. His name is Ashwatthama, and I don't have any milk in the house. Can you please give me a little bit of milk for my child?" And Virata completely forgot, and he felt insulted that a skinny, frail old Brahmana would come and claim to be my friend. And then he insults him. He says, "No, I don't have friends like this. I'm sorry, you're not my friend. Please leave my kingdom." And he got insulted. When he gets insulted, he was thinking, now, how do I avenge this insult? He becomes the teacher of all the royal prince at that time, because he was one of the greatest archers. So he became the king, he became the teacher, and there he trained his boys so well in martial arts and archery. And when education was over, he asked those children, because it is very common to give dakshina, to give a price to your teachers. When you learn from a teacher, you have to pay a price. It is very common. And normally the price is taking the instructions of the teacher and spreading it, just like in the case of many teachers, even Prabhupada, we know, is the founder of ISKCON. He learned so many things from his teachers, and his teacher only gave him one advice: please take this message of bhakti to the Western world. That was the price that he had to pay to be a student, that you follow the simple instruction. And then he took that instruction to his heart, and he brought the message of bhakti to the West. So in this story, Dronacharya asked his students, now that you all have graduated, the price that I would like you to pay is I would like you to attack the kingdom of Virat and capture that king, tie him up, and bring him to me. And the students, powerful students, Arjuna, Bhima, Duryodhana, Karna, so many powerful warriors that he trained, they went and attacked the kingdom, and without much bloodshed, they captured the king and brought him to his old friend, Dronacharya. And when they brought, Dronacharya looked at him, and he just let him give him a piece of his mind. He says, "How could you do this? We were friends. You insulted me like this." And then he insulted him. right? And he humiliated him, the king being humiliated by the students. So when he felt humiliated, now what does he do after he got released? He goes back and he does austerities. How do I take revenge back on these friends? So he does a fire ceremony, and in the fire ceremony, he gets two children. One is Drishtadyumna and Draupadi. These are the two children he gets. And what does he do? He gets them married in the family of the Pandavas. And he has his own son, and Dronacharya has his own son, Ashwatthama, and Virat has two children, one son and a daughter, who then go on to avenge the insult of his father by killing the teacher. I'm telling you a long story, but in a very short format. So the reason I'm telling you this story is friendships, when we want to use one another, there's absolute disappointment in that. And when someone is disappointed, then we're always seeking how to take revenge, how to get up on that person. And this is what we have in this world. Or you hurt me, let me see how I can hurt you. If we can't hurt you, we'll hurt someone else. So this is what happens in the world of material relationships and material friendships. We're simply thinking how to use another person for my satisfaction. And then that person becomes disappointed and then see how to use you. So it becomes a very, very messy affair in these friendships. And therefore, it is explained how important it is to have friendships that are deep from the core of our existence. When their friendships are based on our unique dharma, on the unique principle of our spiritual being, then those friendships are everlasting. So these are just 3 steps on how we can take stock of ourselves and find like-minded people and build relationships from the heart. So deep divers. Any questions or comments before? Any thoughts on this? Any reflections on these friendships? Yes, Angelina. You're on mute. You have to unmute yourself, Angelina.
Thank you so much for your story, and thank you for the advice with unmuting. I have a question or something I wanted to reflect upon. I had somebody in my life, a girlfriend for 30 years, and in like the past 2 years, she started very intensively comparing to myself and showing some kind of envy, which I didn't want to spot. Like, okay, she's just telling this, I'm hearing it, I'm not reacting, not responding, nothing from my side has changed until the very moment that she obviously wanted to trigger something in me, but she couldn't. So she tried to proactively hurt me in a way to do some kind of damage, which she couldn't. But I was just thinking, how far should I just let people be themselves and just hear what they say and hear them suffering and have empathy? And when should I start just proactively telling somebody, okay, now you're comparing, are you envy? Or, because this is also trigger from my side. And I'm not I don't have these burdens. If I hear envy, I don't just nothing. I just listen, and it doesn't change the way I am. But at some point, people get so angry that they really want to do me harm. And I'm not sure how to act without hurting them, because they obviously suffer a lot.
Yes. Yeah, so it's a very interesting situation. being friends with someone for 30 years. So now we look at time and we think they're our friends for 30 years. We have to analyze. The first step is taking stock of ourselves, because you don't want to lose yourself in pursuit of friendship. Because unless you find yourself, you won't find friends. And friends who are always taking from you and who are hurting you because they're envious or they're comparing themselves to you. You know, our principle, step one, is to take stock of people around us. And obviously, it seems like this person is taking energy from you, mental energy, emotional energy. And those are energy suckers. They suck energy from you. You have to reevaluate that. And part of the reevaluation is, who is Angelina? And when you find out who is Angelina, and then you just simply check, does this person fit into my world of who is Angelina? And even if we consider them friends for 30, 40 years, we may have to set them free. Because sometimes friendships can, for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, they can take energy from you. And they can pull you down, hold you back from flying free. And so therefore, we have to really, really, first step, take stock of our friend circles, because there is a reason we're not able to fly. We're not able to experience that freedom, that spiritual love and freedom. There's something that's holding us back. And you'll be surprised to know it is your circle of friendships that hold you back. But then you're like, oh, I know her since kindergarten. We used to draw butterflies together. We used to have sleepover nights, and then we went to high school together. And we dated among the same circle of friends, and we went to college together, and we drank together. We went to vacations together. And if you feel that those were the foundation of your friendships, and you feel that those friendships are what you value, then you have to take a stock of that, an inventory of that. It's very, very important. Because most of us in this world, we don't progress in life, is because there are people that don't belong in our lives, and they need to be let go of. You may notice there are exes that we pine over, mixed opportunities and all of these things, and we just hold on to them, and it's gone. And those friendships and things, we have to simply let go. So once you take stock of all your friends, and then you do an analysis of who you are, and then you do the comparison, not comparison, you're trying to find eternal friendships. That means there is devoid of ego. Because ego causes death to friendships. Friendships are eternal. So when you have deep friendships, there is no ego involved. So my recommendation is simply to analyze, take inventory of people around you who are holding you back from being the true Angelina. Joyful, happy, blissful, and completely free. So where is that Angelina? So I don't have a detailed step by step, because I don't know the details of the friendship, but principally speaking, we have to analyze these things. And this is the process of Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya means analytical study of the self. When you do analytical study of the self, you'll find your true beautiful self.
What was the word again?
Sankhya.
Thank you.
Angelina, I'm sorry, I don't have a profound answer for you, other than just some beautiful steps that you could possibly try.
Thank you. That's enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelina. Any other questions? Anybody would like to? Yes, Nate Prabhu.
Ivo.
Haribo.
Yes, my question is as a two-part question. So it's spoken from the point of view of the person who has these participants within their friend circle that may be holding them back. What if you're one of the people holding people back? What is some pointers for those people? And also this idea of self-study, can you give us some more tools as far as how we can take stock and we can, study ourselves so when we do approach the exam, we're more prepared?
There was one time I learned this word chop chop. And they told me in America, when you want to get something done, you want to move forward, you have to say chop chop. So we have to chop chop. They have to chop the umbilical cord that's holding them back. If you're the toxic person in the relationship, they have to chop and cut the umbilical cord so they can grow. It's very important. Unless you chop the umbilical cord, the baby does not grow. You have to disconnect the baby from the mother. So whenever we want our individual growth, individual personal growth, we have to chop those toxic relationships that hold us back. In terms of how to really take stock, it's really finding out who you are. Once you find out who you are, I'm this beautiful eternal servant of God. And I have a mission in this world to serve. If that is who you are, then you'd have to see who are people that is supporting that mission and who you are. There's the eternal spirit, the eternal spiritual spark. Who is helping to light that spark? Who's creating that fire of spiritual joy in our lives? Who is adding more soft, sticks, tender sticks to burn this fire of spiritual love in our heart? And who are people that are just coming and putting their, wet, dirty wood into the fire? Who are putting water into the fire? Who's trying to turn the fire off? So this fire of spiritual love in our heart, we have to see who are people that are supporting us. And that's how we gauge. Because this fire of spiritual love in our heart, it wants to grow. It wants to completely engulf your full existence. That is what we're here for, to have this complete spiritual experience in this life. We want to be completely burning in this fire of spiritual ecstasy. And why is it that we're not burning? Who is holding us back from that experience? Yes, Esther.
Yeah, Vedaji, I also find that in when you have like you feel you have like a trustworthy relationship where you grow together, you come to grow pains, right? So sometimes when you have like a genuine friendship and there's a lot of trust and love, but sometimes there are grow pains because then maybe your ego hits the ego of the other one, or you both have to work with that, because but also you have to stay open to see where you can learn from it.
Yes.
So you grow together. And I noticed when I was with you, what was it, September, not last year, I think, in Radhadesh, when I came to you, because I was suffering like 9 months for very heavy low back pains, and I tried everything like acupuncture and physio, all these kind of therapies. And then I talk with you, I said, oh, I have so much pain, can you please help me? I cannot do yoga, asana and all that. And I talked with you for 3 days, and the only thing you said to me, like, what or who is holding you back from your growth? And since that time, I came to talk with the person who was actually, I also told him, you have to cut the cord, you have to cut the energetic cord and let me go, you know? And since then, we know when there is a growing aspect and you both want to learn, this relation, this friendship evolves even better, you know, but sometimes it's difficult also.
Growing is painful, Esther. Spiritual growth is also painful. Even in spiritual relationships, you'll notice the egos will come out. And what do we have to do? We have to take the ego and talk with one another and then dissolve the ego. And when you dissolve it, then you can grow again. Because see, the ego is, they consider ego is the murderer of friendships. They don't just say killer. They say it murders friendships. So it's very, very dangerous. So you're right that yes, even in close spiritual growth, you will have growth pains. And those are very beautiful because that's what makes the relationship even gets closer to one another. It doesn't separate you. Ego doesn't separate you, but it brings you even closer. So that's the beauty of spiritual growth. In material growth, when the ego comes in, we split apart. Don't talk to me. I block you. You block me. I trash talk you to your friends. You trash talk me to your friends. And we're like, we've created two different worlds. But in spiritual life, when ego gets in the way and we dissolve it, we become even closer. So yeah, it's a very good point you make. And don't think just because we're on a spiritual path, we're not going to have struggles. The more we advance in spiritual life, more the struggles. And those struggles are simply bigger and bigger opportunities for growth. Bigger the struggle, bigger the opportunity for growth. The more your back is against the wall, the higher you can jump. And this is what spiritual life is. We look at the Srimad Bhagavad Puran, it is nothing but trials and tribulations. And how they overcome such trials and tribulations. I was talking last night with the monk mode boys, and we were having a discussion because we were reading the Puranas together. And one of the things that I shared was someone who becomes spiritually evolved, like in the case of Haridas Thakur, he is being whipped in 22 marketplaces for nothing that he did. It's simply because he was chanting the names of God. And he was explaining when he was asked, didn't you feel all the whipping of the soldiers? He said, no, I was feeling spiritual ecstasy. This is his response. I mean, who in the world, in their common sense mind, will think they're facing spiritual ecstasy when they're being whipped and caned? But because his consciousness was so evolved that he sees all these opportunities simply to surrender more and more and more. So that when we come to the stage of absolute surrender, that's when we have absolute friendships. And in the Srimad Bhagavad Puran, it is explained that the divine is our true eternal best friend. There is no friend than the divine, who is situated in this beautiful tree of life. This human body is considered to be like a tree. And the heart is like the big trunk of the tree. And within this heart, there is two souls, the individual soul and the supreme soul. The individual soul is ourselves, and the supreme soul is the divine. And we individual souls are constantly trying to enjoy the fruits. Through our senses, we're trying to enjoy everything in the world. And the divine soul in the heart is simply watching and observing you and waiting for you to turn around and say, hey, buddy, what's going on? Just simply to look at the divine. The divine is simply waiting. And so it is explained that the divine person sitting in the heart, the supreme divine soul in our heart, is simply waiting for us to reciprocate and say hello back. And the divine is constantly trying to say, hey, Esther, hey, Esther, hey, Esther. And we have to say, hey, you're here. And that's all it takes. In one of my favorite saints, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was so emphatic when he says, when he writes his deepest realization, when he's saying, the divine in his heart is speaking to him and saying, Ami bina bandhu ara kya chetomar. Very beautifully, poetically he writes. He said the divine being in his heart is speaking to him and asking him, my dear Bhakti Vinod, who in the world is more dear of a friend to you than me? I've been waiting for you lifetimes after lifetimes. And this is what friendship is. The divine is our eternal friend. And to realize that, this is the real essence of friendship. We have outside friends, and then the real friend is deep inside. And when you find that friend, then all other friendships become even more beautiful. I don't know if that makes any sense. So yes, we need to cultivate friendship with the divine in our heart and try to spend a little time. Every day, I recommend every one of you to do the Heartspace meditation. Do it for half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours. Spend time with the divine. That's what it is. The Heartspace meditation is simply spending time with the divine and cultivating that divine friendship. I know Diane was doing a lot of sadhana early morning, getting super fired up. And she was reporting to Keshavi, who was sharing the spiritual ecstasy, Diane's spiritual ecstasy. So this is how it works, to cultivate this divine spiritual friendship. Okay. Thank you for your beautiful questions and beautiful sharings. We will be joining very soon on the Seeker's Quest podcast with Chaitanya Charan, Radha Priti, and myself. And I just have to go to a different location, so I'll end it a few minutes early. So thank you all so much for joining in the Heartspace. And please let us stay connected to our hearts through all trials and tribulations. It should only bring us closer to our hearts. Namaste, everyone.
Namaste, Hare Krishna.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Thank you.
Does anybody need the link? I can stay on, so to the Seeker's Quest.